What I'm asking for is a piece of ice, cold and poorly located, that can play a vital role in world peace.
Imagine a single island in the Arctic sparking a global showdown. Greenland, vast, frozen, and seemingly remote, is suddenly at the center of a high-stakes game between the United States, Europe, Russia, and China. What started as a bold move by Washington has turned into a geopolitical firestorm. With jets in the sky, warnings from Berlin, and the future of NATO hanging by a thread. This isn't about real estate. This is about rare earth minerals, Arctic trade routes, and the power to control the 21st century. And now, Europe is standing up, drawing a line, and saying, "Not this time." Right now, Greenland is crawling with Russian and Chinese ships. Yet no one is realistically going to take the US on in a military showdown over the island. But Trump's success in Venezuela lit a fire in Washington, whetting its appetite for more global influence. When he declared he would rule Venezuela, the shockwaves weren't just in the Americas. They rippled from Panama to Taiwan, from Kiev to Brussels. Behind the scenes, Russia and China were in a panic, terrified of losing access to the Arctic Ocean. But the real nightmare didn't start there. It began in Copenhagen. Because Trump didn't just open the Greenland file, he left the Venezuela file wide open at the same time. He didn't say, "We want it." He said, "We will take it." This wasn't a casual real estate pitch. This was a national security ultimatum. And for the first time in history, Europe built an iron wall against Washington. Spain, France, Italy, they all spoke with one voice. Greenland belongs to Denmark. Even America's closest ally, the UK, looked the other way. But the real shock came from Berlin. The German foreign minister tossed diplomatic niceties aside and directly warned Washington, "Touch Greenland and you'll face us." For the first time, NATO's Article 5, designed to protect against Russia, was now invoked against the US itself. And the spark that ignited all this, that ill-fated analogy from Washington, which was far more than a diplomatic slip, it exposed just how out of touch Trump's administration was with military reality. While Trump and his team imagined Denmark's defenses as quaint sled patrols from another century, the truth on the ground was far more serious and deadly. Denmark had quietly been transforming Greenland into a strategic Arctic fortress, with an ambitious defense plan stretching from 2025 to 2033. The turning point in Washington came immediately after Maduro's arrest in Venezuela. Overnight, the rhetoric shifted. Greenland was no longer framed as a want. It was a national security need. And with that shift, diplomacy was thrown out the window and replaced by military planning. Stephen Miller's confident remark that "no one will fight the US over Greenland" revealed a critical mindset. Allies were no longer seen as independent nations. They were treated as vassals. But Denmark refused to be silent. Instead, it roared. The Danish ambassador to the UN called Washington's words harsh and unacceptable threats. This was the end of polite diplomacy and the start of a full-blown crisis. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen's call for support was met with unexpected speed and unity in Europe. Defying Trump's divide-and-conquer strategy, the European Union stood firm. Denmark, Spain, France, Italy, and the UK released a joint statement. Greenland's future belongs to Denmark. Sovereignty is non-negotiable. Europe's stance sent a crystal-clear message to Washington. This is not Venezuela. This is our land. Even the UK, long seen as America's closest partner, broke ranks. Prime Minister Keir Starmer explicitly sided with Denmark, signaling cracks in the Anglo-Saxon bloc. For once, Europe was united against Trump. The most seismic moment came from Germany. Foreign Minister Roderick Wadephul abandoned all diplomatic niceties and spoke in blunt, deterrent terms. The message was chillingly clear. Europe is no longer passive. Germany, the engine of the EU, was now signaling that it would actively defend Danish sovereignty, even against the United States. Berlin reminded Washington that Greenland is Danish territory. protected under NATO's Article 5. In other words, if the US tried to seize Greenland, NATO might actually come to Denmark's defense. This was the harshest ultimatum from Europe since the Cold War, and a clear warning. The continent can say no to Washington and act independently if it must. According to reports, Danish officials are even calling for German and French troops to be stationed in Greenland to deter American aggression. What started as a bold, almost casual proposal from Washington has now erupted into a full-blown geopolitical showdown in the Arctic. The question is no longer if Greenland matters. It's how far the US is willing to push before facing a united Europe ready to push back. Conservative MP Rasmus Jarlov dropped a bombshell when he said Europe should reluctantly accept its allies' stance, because if the US ever tried to muscle its way into Greenland, it would make a military occupation extremely costly for America. On the left, Pelle Dragstedt didn't mince words. This isn't just politics anymore. This turns NATO's sacred Article 5 into a trap. Article 5 is the bedrock of the alliance. An attack on one is an attack on all. But Dragstedt asked the chilling question, what happens if the aggressor is the alliance leader itself? Suddenly, the clause isn't protection. It's a paradox that could tear NATO apart. This isn't sci-fi. It's a legal and strategic reality on the table right now. Experts warn that if Denmark invoked Article 5 against an attack from another NATO member, especially the United States, Brussels could grind to a halt and the alliance could collapse under its own rules. This nightmare scenario is now fueling debates in capitals from Copenhagen to Ottawa. Are we next? Canada's parliament is openly asking it. And beyond the Arctic, the spectrum of global security, Taiwan, the Panama Canal, Ukraine, critical chip factories, is now being reimagined through the same lens of distrust. What's really shaken this fragile order is a failure of respect and a massive misread by Washington. Trump and his inner circle openly underestimated Denmark's military capabilities, mocking what they assumed were quaint Arctic patrols. But Denmark has been quietly transforming Greenland into a modern defense hub with billions in investment and cutting-edge assets built for harsh Arctic conditions. The patrols Trump once dismissed aren't just tourist sleds. They're sophisticated units equipped for real-world defense, supported by advanced tech designed for extreme cold. And Denmark's broader defense buildup, funded with tens of billions of kroner through 2033, has dramatically upgraded its military posture. Key assets like stealth F-35 fighter jets now dominate airspace once assumed defenseless. Greenland's defense network includes Arctic-adapted drones, long-range anti-ship missiles, and elite units intimately familiar with the terrain. These aren't just toys, they're serious deterrents. So, when Washington trumpets national security concerns, critics ask a blunt question. If the United States truly believed Greenland was under threat from rivals like Russia or China, why not invest massively in Denmark's defenses, just as billions were sent to Ukraine? Denmark, for its part, already has the economic and military capacity to defend itself, and it's showing it. The so-called 2033 vision outlines a nation strengthening its own shield, not begging for protection. The ripple effects of this standoff are huge. Trump's aggressive moves, starting with Venezuela and now Greenland, have broken the traditional trust that underpins global alliances. Allies used to see the US as protector, now some fear predator. Protection agreements once considered ironclad are now being seen as potential blueprints for conquest. In other words, Trump's push hasn't made the world safer. It's turned every alliance into a gamble, every guarantee into a question mark, and every partner into a potential rival. To dismiss Trump's Greenland obsession as just another quirky map fixation would be strategic blindness. This isn't about land. It's about control over the future, rare earth elements, Arctic trade routes, and the minerals that will decide the 21st century balance of power. This isn't a land war. It's a war over technology, energy, and global commerce. Behind the curtain of national security lies the trillion-dollar Kvanefjeld mine. a treasure trove of rare earth elements, the very heart of modern tech, electric vehicles, F-35 chips, smart missiles. They all depend on these minerals. Right now, China holds 90% of the global supply, and Washington's goal: turn Greenland into a U.S. mining colony, break China's chokehold, and seize strategic independence. Not through trade, not through diplomacy, but through confiscation, the same playbook used in Venezuela. In short, classic colonialism reborn in the digital age. But Denmark and the EU aren't passive spectators. They know these resources are vital for Europe's own tech and defense industries, and they're ready to defend their sovereignty and strategic autonomy against U.S. predation. Meanwhile, Moscow and Beijing are on high alert. Greenland isn't just an island. It's the control tower of the Northern Sea Route, the new polar Silk Road. Melting ice caps are shortening trade between Asia and Europe. Whoever controls Greenland controls this Arctic highway. For Russia, it's existential. U.S. control would strangle Moscow's energy exports from the north. Putin isn't mincing words. And Russian diplomats have warned that any U.S. conflict there would trigger a military response. The Arctic could become hotter than Ukraine or the Pacific, all because of Greenland. Ironically, China is siding with Denmark, fearing a U.S. Navy chokehold on the Arctic. Suddenly, the U.S. finds itself opposed not just by Europe, but by Russia and China, united against American annexation. The parallels with history are striking. In 1917, the U.S. forced Denmark to sell the Virgin Islands, citing strategic necessity and submarine threats. Today, Trump is trying to rewrite that script, using China and Russia as the excuse to seize Greenland. It's almost a mirror image of the 1956 Suez Crisis, but with roles reversed. Then, the U.S. stopped Imperial Britain and France. Now, Europe is standing up to an imperial U.S. The irony is sharp. Western moral superiority has eroded, and raw power is the only currency left. According to The Economist, after hitting walls in Copenhagen and Brussels, Trump shifted tactics, directly targeting Greenland itself. The plan? Bypass Denmark and offer Greenland a Micronesia model. Declare independence, take U.S. funding, and hand over defense and foreign policy to Washington. It's an insidious scheme to fracture the Kingdom of Denmark from within, testing European unity like never before. What was once a theoretical debate, the collapse of NATO, is now a real possibility. Venezuela fell, and Trump's hand is now reaching for Greenland. Even if his fantasy never redraws maps, it has already damaged the spirit of the Western alliance. The voices raised in Berlin and Copenhagen weren't just defending land, they were defending Europe's honor. In this new reality, the U.S. is no longer seen as a reliable guarantor, but as a potential threat under Trump. Article 5, once the alliance's backbone, now ticks like a time bomb at the heart of NATO. And the safe haven it once promised collapsed that night. Denmark's F-35s in the sky, and Germany's blunt warning on the ground, sent a crystal-clear message to Washington. Greenland is not for sale, and it is far from defenseless. An iron wall has been raised, and behind it stands a Europe that is now charting its own course, no longer waiting on the U.S. What do you think about this standoff? Drop your thoughts in the comments and join the conversation.